Here we are, back inside my 1994 Ford Mustang 3.8 V6, which I've recently acquired. Now, it has failed its MOT, so we're slowly working through everything that needs doing in order to get it through its MOT. We've already fixed the fog light, that's working now, fixed the lights for the number plate, so they're working now, and the next thing on the list is the handbrake, so I'm going to have a look at the handbrake. Relatively straightforward in this, dead easy to do because it's all done inside the car. Now, it's not working well enough to hold the car, so it needs adjusting. Now, in order to get to the inner workings of the handbrake underneath here, this entire centre console has to be either moved out of the way or taken out altogether. And it's not that difficult to do. This surround around the gear shift, that needs to all come out. Now, it just clips in under here and it clips in there. There will be a screw or a bolt behind that bit and a screw or bolt behind that bit. Now, the whole thing slides out. Obviously, this doesn't move because this is an automatic. If you have a manual one of these, you'll have to take the gear knob off first, which just twists off, and then that'll give you the ability to unclip this, lift it up with the gear to clear the gear stick. And these are all held in with a bunch of clips, so you just need to pull that away from there, pull that away from there, and it unclips at the bottom. And once that's out, that's just a case of manoeuvring it around the rubber strip. I think there's a cable back here for the cigarette lighter, so we'll need to get to that and unplug that. And what I've done is I've got that moved down into drive, so I can just unhitch that. There's the connection for the cigarette lighter. I'll see if I can get that off one-handed, which obviously isn't going to work. So they're both unclipped now, both those wires. Now, when they go back together, you can't really get that the other way around. Lift that out of the way, and the spade connector goes on to that terminal there, and the black rubber one obviously goes over the side of that. Now, we don't need that for the moment, so that can go out of the way down there. The car can be put back into park. Take your foot off the foot brake and it will roll back a little bit, but then it'll lock into place. Take the keys out because we don't want anything getting shorted out or anything. Now, there's two screws here that need to come out, and as well as those, we lift the centre console arm up here. This rubber pad and this rubber pad also has to come out, so they just pull out, and that's both of those, so they can go to one side. And then in there you can see there's a screw there, and there's a screw, where's my finger, and there's a screw there. Take those two screws out. This inside piece will then slot out. It's probably clipped in underneath with two push clips, so you just lift the whole thing out, and then pretty much you can get the centre console out of the way. Now, I will have to remove the switch for the fog light and get that disconnected because there'll be some electrics under there, and obviously we've just getting that working. I don't want to risk damaging that at all. There might be a couple of screws under here when this comes out, but you'll see those in a moment. Both these bolts here, or screws, are 7mm. They do have like an Allen head on them, but I'm just going to use a 7mm socket to take those out of there. And I'm going to try not to drop them under the console where they'll obviously disappear forever. But that's what they look like when they come out. And that's the Allen head if you want to put an Allen key in there. But a 7mm socket does fit just as easily. Right, that's both of those out. And the next one is to get these two screws out in here. So both of those have to come out. As you can see, they're either a Phillips head or a posi drive, whichever one it is that fits. So we need to get those out. And with both of those screws out, now on mine, I've got this pull-up cup holder. Now, you may not, that does need cleaning, we'll get to that later. You may not have a pull-out and fold-up cup holder in your car, but if you haven't, then you need to get hold of this edge and just pull up sharply. Now, I've pulled this a little bit so I can get my fingers underneath it, through it. So we'll just get hold of that and then pull up sharply, and that should come out the two clips underneath, like that. And then that whole unit just lifts out like that, and that's the internal little pocket thing. And then when we look down in here, you can actually see the workings of the handbrake. Obviously, you need to get to that completely, so this whole thing has to come out. Now, there should be two further screws in down here, but there's only the one, which doesn't really matter. I can probably find a screw to put in there, but that screw's got to come out next, and that's also a Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, so that was my mistake. It's actually not a Phillips head screwdriver, it's another 7mm socket head. So get that loosened off. I'll take that out by hand. As you can see, it is the socket head, but it also has a hexagon head, so it's 7mm socket. Now obviously there should be two in there, but there's not in this one, there's only one. So I'll stick that in the bucket for now, and that should then be loose there. And it should also be loose up here. So all we've got to do now is angle all of this backwards. You will need to pull the handbrake up in order to get to it. I need to take that out. You know, disconnect that from underneath, or push it out from underneath. Now your fog light switch, or at least if you have a switch here, sometimes the convertible roof switches here. If you have a convertible, might be another switch that's here, or you may not have a switch at all. You may just have two coin holders. But on my model, I've got this fog light switch here. Now it has one of those sort of levers on the side that goes over that little clip there. You've got to lift that over carefully so you don't break that, and then obviously that plug just pulls out. So we've got the fog light switch there. So we'll put that to one side, and then that should all just go back down inside that hole. Right, so that's all under the console, and the next thing is to get the console out. Now this is going to be a little bit awkward to film one-handed because there's nowhere I can actually put the camera down, but what you need to do is lift this and then pull back. Now you will have to sort of splay these sides out a little bit. If you're worried about damaging any of this, you can always put a bit of masking tape over to protect it, but it should be okay. Now it's kind of lift and pull back. So I'll see if I can get that done. Well, that's the center console out. Well, that was a pain in the neck. And there it is, sitting in the back seat for now. Now sadly, I couldn't film getting it all out. I needed both hands, and there was nowhere to put the camera where you could actually watch what I was doing. However, I will show you it when I put the console back in after we've adjusted the handbrake. It should be a simple, well, I'm saying simple, it was hard enough to get the damn thing out, but it should be a simple reverse process of taking it out. And obviously I'll find some way of hooking up the camera so you can see what I'm doing down here when it all goes back together. But the thing you need to remember if you're taking the console out, or when you need to take a console out, is that these parts here that actually fit down there around the centre part of the dashboard, you have to grab these at the bottom and sort of spread them out over, but not too far. I mean, it is fairly thick plastic, but at the end of the day, it's still 30-year-old fairly thick plastic, and this bit here is actually metal. But you do need to sort of spread those apart on both sides at the same time, and the reason you need to do that is so that they'll clear these two bits here. Because when it comes out, you have to spread those two apart and then lift it as high as you can. In an ideal world, you want the bottom of those two bits of plastic from down there to be up here touching the windscreen, or very close to touching the windscreen, because you need to clear the handbrake cable, and the handbrake handle rather, and that handbrake handle has to be as high up as you can get it in order to clear the space in there for it to go through. Otherwise you'll never get it out. So now the hard bit's done, it's time to do the easy part, and this really is the easy part. This handbrake on these Mustangs, it should be a self-adjusting handbrake, but in 1998 Ford in the USA did a recall on all these Mustangs because they discovered, or it was reported, that the self-adjuster on the handbrake wasn't actually self-adjusting at all or properly. So Ford did a recall. Now the recall was in 98. So if you're in the UK and you have an SN95 Mustang or a New Edge Mustang from 94 to 04, if your Mustang was imported into the UK before 1998, in all likelihood you won't have had the recall done. So you won't have that little U-shaped plate sitting on top of the handbrake. You'll just have it the way you'll just have it the way it should have been when it was standard from the factory. This particular Mustang, my new one, or my recently acquired one rather, that came into the country in 2000 direct from America, so this has had the recall done. And the reason for the recall, as I said, was because the self-adjuster wasn't working properly. What Ford did, initially I was thinking that all they've done is they've put that plate on because that plate actually locks it and stops it from self-adjusting. So I was thinking, if it wasn't self-adjusting in the first place, why would you do a recall and put a plate on that would actually stop it self-adjusting altogether. So I think what they may have done when it's gone back to the dealerships in 98 over there, I think what they've done is they've adjusted the handbrake so it was working properly. Then they've put the plate on, which has locked it into place so it can't adjust anymore, but it does make sure the handbrake's working. However, through time, things get loose, cables stretch, and now one of the reasons that my car failed its MOT was because the handbrake's not working properly. So I've got to adjust it. Thankfully, in these Mustangs, all the adjustments done from inside the car. So you don't have to lie under the car, you don't have to put it on a ramp, you don't have to climb under the car. You can sit comfortably regardless of what the weather is and sit adjusting the handbrake from inside the car, which is dead easy to do, and I'll show you that in a couple of moments. But first, got to get that plate off. Now somebody's always been in here before me, because this plate should be held on. I think it's with an 8mm bolt, but as you can see, mine's held on with a screw. That doesn't fit very well. So we'll take that out and we'll get that plate off. And it's actually not very tight either. It doesn't seem to want to come off. Oh no, I think we're getting it. Right, now I need to keep that screw somewhere safe. And then this plate just lifts off. And that's all it is from the factory. It's a very crude thing, roughly made, being chewed about a bit, but then again that could be because somebody's been in here before me. In fact, that one almost looks homemade, doesn't it? I can't imagine a dealership would make something like that to put on. Still, it has come off, so we can see what we're doing now. So we'll stick that over there. And that's where it went on a little bit pear-shaped. I was filming in the car that afternoon, one of the hottest days that we've had lately, and the phone consistently kept overheating and refusing to record. And when it did record bits of the footage where I was actually doing the adjustment of the handbrake, it was all garbled and fuzzy, and you couldn't make it out at all. I couldn't put that out for you to try and watch because it would have just put you off watching the rest of the video. So there is more of the video to come. You'll see the adjustment that I have done, but the only bit that's missing that I can't show without doing it here is how I actually managed to do the adjustment of the handbrake. Now the easiest way to do it is to have the handbrake off, so flat on the centre console of the car, or down where the centre console would be. So the handbrake lying flat. With your left hand, put your left hand under the handbrake handle, take hold of it, your thumb you push the button in. With your right hand, take your thumb, lift the trigger up away from the cog, and then once you've got that like that, you can lift the handle up without any resistance whatsoever to where you want it. When I lifted mine up, I think I moved mine up to about halfway. Obviously, the non-adjusting plate, the locking plate, was off when I was doing that, as you see in the video. And then once you take the handbrake off, it goes all the way down, and it does tend to self-adjust, or at least it did on mine. It self-adjusted, and it dropped down a little bit close to where I wanted it. But you'll see that upcoming in the rest of the video. I'm really sorry that the phone overheated and it didn't catch the whole adjustment bit that I was doing, but at least we managed to get you explained. I hope you understand. If you have any questions about it, just leave a comment, and I'll try my best to answer your question. Anyway, back to the video. Right, well, hopefully you can see in that photograph that that pin just there is on the fourth tooth up. And before I started this, I think it was one or possibly two teeth higher up than that. So I've managed to adjust that down to the next tooth. I did want it down on the second tooth up from the bottom, but it just doesn't want to go that far down. It's the cable's already tight. So all I need to do now is to put that back on there, fasten it in place, and that'll stop that from self-adjusting anymore. So hopefully that'll be enough. So I'll put this bit back on, and then we'll fire the car up, see if the handbrake will hold it on the drive and see if it'll stop it. And then we can have the aggravation of putting the centre console back in. Now hopefully you can all see that. So there's that screw there, goes in that hole, actually bolts into this framework here, or screws in the framework here. So we'll just get that tightened up as much as it'll go. Now in yours, if your car has one of these on it, it'll more than likely be held in, I think it's either an 8 or 11mm bolt that goes through from the factory. But I think somebody's been in here before and lost the bolt and replaced it with that screw. But that's that clip on. That's not going to move. And of course that stops that from being able to self-adjust now. So now with the car running, If I put it into drive, it should start moving forward on its own. If I put the handbrake on fully, still leaving it in drive, take my foot off the pedal, off the brake pedal, and we're not moving, that's actually holding it in place. So if we take the handbrake off again, lift my foot off the brake pedal, start moving forward, so I get right up the drive, stick that in neutral, and we should roll back over, and the handbrake should hold it, which it does. So hopefully that's going to be enough to get it through the MOT with the handbrake working the way it is now. If it's not, there's no more adjustment inside the car, but there is a little bit of adjustment underneath the car. There's a brake cable that goes from this wheel, you can just see it in the pulley of the wheel there, and that brake cable goes around this wheel and then goes back under the car and through that little rubber grommet you can just see under there to under the car. And I think around about here under the car there's a threaded section with a nut on it, and you can adjust it from underneath the car a little bit. So there is a bit of adjustment there to play with if I need to, but hopefully what we've done today and locking that back in place, that'll have that adjusted enough to get it through its MOT. So now what I've got to do is get the centre console out from the back seat and put it back down here and get everything else connected back up, and that leaves you with just two things to do to get it through its MOT. Now hopefully you can see exactly what's going on here. So you can see the centre console going back in. Now the first thing you need to do is get the handbrake as high in the air as you possibly can, because you need that to be up there to slide the centre console cover for the handbrake over the top of it. So let's see if this works. So we need to have this as high up as we possibly can. And then I've got to slide it down over the handbrake handle like that. So that's over the handbrake now. Hopefully you can see, I don't know if you can see that for the sun, but the handbrake is actually there poking through this. Now it's just a case of getting this down back into position and connecting all the cables and the plugs and the sockets back up. I must say it appears to be going in an awful lot easier than it came out. Of course the gear stick's in the way, so let me just get that into neutral. That should let us take that out of park. And then just drop that down. There's a lot of things in the way that I can do without being in the way under here. There's a couple of plugs, cables, and of course the seatbelt buckle for the driver is in the way. Right, that's pretty much back in. What I want to do is make sure there's no trapped wires under here, because there was a couple before that looked as though they'd been stuck somewhere, but they're not. And then there's a, let me just get this back into park. Right, so that's the console in. It's just a case of connecting everything up. Now I need that cable. There's a socket there to plug in. One there. Hopefully you can see down in there there's a whole bunch of sockets down in that corner that I need to reconnect. But I need to get the wires through here for the fog light switch and get that reconnected. Incidentally, I know a lot of the cars On this one, I have a cigarette lighter over here, which is that bit there sticking out. I know some of you have a cigarette lighter here in front of this sort of storage bin area. If you have one of those, when you take it out, obviously you'll need to disconnect the cables from that to get it out without snagging on the cables. I think everything there is pretty much ready to go back in. It's just these sockets. Let me see if I can fish these wires out of there. If you can see down in there at the front, that plug you can just see in the corner, I've managed to get that reconnected. Thankfully it only connects in one direction, so you can't connect it the wrong way around, so that everything should work. So now there's just this fog light switch to put on, check that the fog light's working, and before I bolt this down properly, and then we've got to put the rest of it back together, and we're all done. And again, with the fog light switch, there's only one way around that grey plug will actually slide in that black bit, and I've also got this wire I have to connect as well. Now I'm just going to make sure the fog light still works before I bolt all this back in. Right, if I switch this on, it should come on at the back there, and you should be able to see that. Now that's all bolted back together and clipped back in place in here, so you should still see that fog light working. I think that's off. That might be on. That might be off. Right, now in here, mine, it should have a bolt there and a bolt there. Obviously mine only had the one in place. So I'll just get that into there. And that should be fairly straightforward to get into place. This also might make my hand look really, really white. Right, that's that one in place. So that's done. That can't move now. And then we've got one each to go in the front here. We did have until I dropped it anyway. Right then, so having dropped that one down there somewhere, I've managed to get it back. I had to take the centre console partly back out again to get it, but I've got it back. Put it a bit further in this time, trying to do it one-handed with the camera. But that's going in nicely. That's that one tight. And then there's just this one over here. That's that one in. So the next thing is this bucket. Now mine has the cup holder that pulls out. Yours may or may not have that depending on model and year. And this is literally just a case of sliding it into that gap. Getting in the right place, and I believe giving it a good push down. And then there's a couple of screws, one of which goes into there. Well, these are Phillips headed screws. Get that one in there. And then there's one more to go in this side and get it in the right place without losing it or dropping it this time. And then there's two of these rubber grommet things. They go in there like that, and the other one fits in that side like so. That's that in, and that's back together. And obviously cup holder still works as long as the handbrake's not on, which is a marvellous bit of planning. Right, so that's that done. Now I've got to get the surround around there to go in, which needs a cigarette lighter plugged in. That's a cigarette lighter plugged back in. There's one spade connector and one circular one. And then this should just go into there like that. And clips in. Right, that's that in. Now that is the entire centre console back together, back in the car, all nice and solid. Well, that's back together. God, this one fought me all the way. I wouldn't care. About a year, 2 years ago, I did the exact same job in the 96 Mustang that's parked just there. And it was so much easier. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know why one's easier than the other, but this one was particularly difficult, especially in getting the centre console out. But it all came out. The main thing to remember, as I said, when you're taking the console out, is to get your hands at the bottom and slide it apart or pull it apart a bit so you can get over this central piece in the dashboard. And then you need to get the whole thing up as high as you can. So once you've undone all the screws and manage as many connections as you can from the sockets and the plugs, etc., slide the console back as far as you can. Grab the bottoms of it down by on the carpet, slide them apart a little bit to lift it up on an angle over the centre console part, over like the centre part of the dashboard. And the angle you want is, you want ideally the bottom of the centre console touching or just about touching the windscreen. You want it on that kind of angle. And you need your handbrake lever to be as high up as you can possibly get it to slide this cover over. Other than that, that's it. It's all done, it's all back together. Wow, the length of time this is taking, because when you haven't got a lot of time, you're only doing a little bit now and then. Gosh, it takes some time to put together, but it's done. The handbrake, for me, seems to be working. It holds the car on the ramp that is the bottom of my drive. Whereas I was driving it up the drive and I yanked the handbrake on, it did stop the car. So hopefully that'll get it through the MOT. If not, as I said earlier, there's one more little bit of adjustment underneath the car, above the prop shaft, on the nut where the handbrake cable goes in. Camera's wobbling around a little bit. I'm sorry about that. It's because you're on the floor of the car and I keep moving around. So the only thing we've got to do now is have a look at that welding on the back end. That means the bumper's going to have to come off from one of the wheels, and obviously dismantle the steering column so I can get the hazard light switch sorted out. Hopefully those parts will arrive shortly and we'll be able to get into that. But for now though, this bit's done. If you've enjoyed this video, and after all the aggravation I've had with it and the length of time it's taken to put it together and get it out, that definitely deserves caressing the like button on the way out. If you want to see more stuff like this tackled, completed and all put back together, consider subscribing to the channel on the way out. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one, which hopefully won't be as long coming together as this one was. Bye for now.